You're watching the Isaiah Factor, Uncensored.
And welcome and thank you for joining us for the second half hour of The Factor Uncensored. Now, to live images of Capitol Hill you're looking at there, where the Speaker of the House has ordered a committee to open an impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. According to Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Republicans have uncovered serious and credible allegations that he says point to corruption. This stems from the business dealings of the Biden family, specifically those of son Hunter Biden, that took place before Biden's presidency. The White House calling it, quote, extreme politics at its worth. Joining us to talk about it, University of Houston downtown professor Dr. Dietrich von Bietenfeld. Glad to have you here on The Factor Uncensored. So is there any validity to this, or is Representative McCarthy appeasing his party right now?
Unfortunately, we won't know until an investigation occurs whether there's any additional evidence of high crimes and misdemeanors or connection to Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and those sorts of dealings where we do have questions. We've talked before about the idea that art is a great place to sort of launder or wash money, and Hunter Biden's art maybe isn't up to the par of Picasso. So we don't really see a lot of that. The biggest sort of red herring.
We've been hearing out of Washington, this is a conservative group saying, if you don't do this, if you don't move forward with this impeachment, then we will come after you, and then we will bring a halt to the government. We know that.
Absolutely, and that's where we're really looking at the motivation, right? Because even Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is notorious for filing impeachment charges the day after Joe Biden was sworn in, even she's saying,
it looks like he's guilty.
Right, I just feel it, right? And so in her very sane and reasonable judgment, she was looking for this a couple of years ago, and now she's even saying, let's slow down, because they don't really have the evidence yet that would move this forward, and it's a Democrat-controlled Senate. So while the House is operating like a district attorney, and that's where that political tit-for-tat comes in, you're going to get us in Fulton County, Georgia, we're going to come get you in D.C., the Senate is actually operating as judge and jury. So it doesn't really matter. Trump was impeached twice, and he still continued on because the Senate refused to convict. So a Democrat-controlled Senate and a narrow Republican majority in the House. This is probably not going anywhere, but as you mentioned, Speaker McCarthy, if he doesn't get some of these far-right people on his side, September 30th, we might be looking at a government shutdown.
Absolutely. Now, for those who are wondering, when you see a situation like this, where politics plays more of a role than what's actually going on, what would you tell the American public who may be looking in saying, this is all about politics. This is not about reality. This is not about real crimes?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, and who puts these people in office, right? So when you point at somebody, you've got four fingers pointing back at you. The reality is we've empowered these individuals to make this more theater. We have the President Camacho mentality of idiocracy now, where we want more theatrics than governance.
And really quick, would it be better to wait for this indictment? Because that's what the Biden administration and many Democrats didn't want, this indictment with his son Hunter Biden, because it could implicate his father. You would hear more of what happened in this indictment from the feds if they are forthcoming.
I think that would add to the legitimacy and detract from any sort of arguments of hyperpartisanship. It would add to the credibility and validity of the investigation. However, this is just the impeachment inquiry and to move it forward with the investigation. So you can't start an investigation too early because they may want to keep certain evidence or start interviewing witnesses to start building. Once that indictment potentially comes, then they've already got momentum for the actual investigative process.
Also, Dr. von Bietenfeld, tonight there's developing information about a candidate. You probably heard about her. Or have you seen her? She's a candidate from Virginia, and she, after previously live streaming herself having sex with her husband online, Susanna Gibson has condemned the videos for being leaked, but she says she isn't dropping from the race in Virginia, in the House race. And the question is, do people care about sex lives of politicians anymore? In this case, her and her husband had sex and did sex things.
Online, got some tips.
And then they asked for some money. You know, like, give us some tips. So, you know, should that be held against her?
I think they were probably asking for some advice on spicing things up, and so.
I'm sorry. Financial tips, money, not sex
absolutely,
tips. They've already got that going.
Right. Well, she's a nurse practitioner. He's a lawyer, so we already know about lawyers. But at the end of the day, they're married. So this isn't Gary Hart. This isn't John Edwards. But we have seen this with Katie Hill in California, where she resigned. We do know that there are moves to make revenge porn or the publication of people's personal images criminal. And I think the early 2000s movie, The Contender, sums this up quite a bit with Joan Allen, where we say, why do we care who people are having sex with? Well, it makes for good theater. And like I said, we've got this idiocracy mentality now with our voting, where we like the engagement and
in the last 20 seconds, did Trump change things? Because, I mean, he did some crazy stuff and people didn't give a care.
The big parallel with Trump was more with John Edwards, because it was extramarital, and there's the allegation of using campaign money to cover it up.
But people still did not care.
And they still voted. In this case, they should care even less, because it's her partner, it's consensual, and why do we have a different standard for a woman than a man?
Right. There you go. Dr. Dietrich von Biedenfeld.